everyone. Welcome to the session with a fire chat with Marten Kaevats, who is the National Digital Advisor to the Government Office of Estonia, or unofficially the Chief Innovation Officer of Estonia. Thanks, Marten, for being with us here.
No worries. It was very good to join you in this meeting. Although I'm in my bedroom currently.
Yeah, right. We needed to do some, innovation to make this happen today. Connecting with a computer for voice and having your mobile for the video. But thanks a lot. We're really grateful to have you here. So today, we're gonna talk a lot about actually innovation in Estonia and the state of art of AI and all these buzzwords we hear about e-government, e-state, digital identity, all this stuff. So we really want to know what's happening. But before that, could you tell us what is exactly your job as a national advisor of the government? What do you do exactly?
So my official title is National Digital Advisor, and I'm responsible for anything digital and innovation related in Estonia. So I advise the Estonian government on matters on information society and innovation. So basically all of the new sorts of technologies that for example, this conference is about, then I'm the person who actually initiated the Estonian AI strategy, the Estonian AI policy, and also the legal. We are doing an AI law in Estonia. Plus, we have a lot of different other innovation-related projects. I'm leading the initiative on self-driving cars, and mainly and more focused. Estonia is mostly about having an actually architectural plan on how to build governance. And I'm basically responsible for the governance architecture of the whole Estonia. And what is important to understand for people who don't know Estonia is that Estonia is a distributed architecture. This means that we do not have a central server, but all the data flows actually move relatively fastly. Compared to, I would argue that we have the most adaptive and fastest governmental information architecture there is, and it does not have a big brother in it. And that's one of the most important things, that the Estonian architecture from the very early beginning has been built in a human-centric way, which means that Estonians are the owners of their own data. And this has been done in this way for the past 25 years. And I'm currently basically more or less responsible for all of the new initiatives to make these new initiatives such as AI understandable for the public sector and also understandable for the society. And as an architect, my job is to place those new technologies in an existing framework in a way that it would work. So that's something what I do, more or less.
Wow, very exciting. So can you tell our audience a little bit about the buzzwords that we hear, like that you guys are doing? Like, what is, for example, e-government? What is exactly the things that you're doing? What does it entail? How does it work? The digital national digital identity that you guys are, running it. How are you managing it, and so on? Just a little bit to let our audience know about it.
So just as an example, for example, I would argue that this global pandemic that hit us all in the springtime, then the government and Estonia, I would argue, was the best ready for this type of event, because in Estonia we can do everything online. We can vote online, we can do our taxes, and we can do them all really fastly. And the Estonian bureaucratic system is throughout the last 25 years really gotten used to using these types of things. So that's one of the main lessons learned from Estonia, that digital transition has got actually very little to do with technology and everything to do with mindset and culture of bureaucrats. And also it's about having a more or less holistic way of looking at things like interoperability, how the different systems work together. And I think if we're talking about AI, then this is also one of the most important topics here in Estonia, that it's not necessarily deploying any sort of small gadgetry, but it's rather creating a holistic ecosystem where lots and lots of different narrow AI applications can actually work with each other. And in this year, we're actually having a bunch of different pilots to actually show how this, let's say, interoperable AIs work. And this is super interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about these pilots that's happening, if it's not confidential?
Estonia is moving towards to something that we call a seamless society, which basically means that our goal is to automate all routine bureaucracy within the next 5 to 10 years. If you can imagine, well, we haven't had any paperwork for 10 years anyway, but automatizing all of the different processes online takes a bit longer. But currently, the main project we are doing, piloting, is something that we call a bureaucrat, which means basically krat in Estonian public sector means artificial intelligence. And bureaucrat is a play with words. Basically, it's about automated bureaucracy. It's like a bureaucrat with the mythological creature means that means automated bureaucracy. But what it means in technical terms, it's a personal assistant that will do all the bureaucratic bullshit bingo for you. And we will, by the end of this year, we will have first of these bots ready and working, doing very simple things at first. But this is an architecture that we can build upon. And hopefully in the next 5 years, we can automate, let's say, all of governmental digital services via one channel, which is like your personal assistant that can do it for you. But one other comment is that everybody nowadays is talking about artificial intelligence. And last year in the GovTech Summit, I think it was in November in Paris, I met one guy from Accenture, and they were doing research about narrow AI applications in the public sector. And what was interesting, Estonia was not part of that research, but what was interesting, and this is statistics from last year, is that governments on average had spent something like 10 to 15 million euros annually on narrow AI applications, and have by that time, last year in November, had deployed about 8 different narrow AI applications within the public sector. At that time,
that was the budget for Estonia, 10 million? Was it the budget of Estonia?
Well, I'm about to reach that point. Last year, in November, we had spent something like 800,000 euros, and we had 24 live AI applications. Today, our number is something like we have spent roughly 2 million euros, and we have something like 40 artificial intelligence bots working with various different fields in the public sector. So these different applications are not copy-paste type of applications, but these are very, very different applications. So already within 2 years, we built quite a vast community of artificial intelligence within the public sector as well. And by the end of this year, we aim to be at something like 55 different AI applications within the public sector. But saying those things, the point is that it's not about the money you put into the digital development. It's also about having a holistic ecosystem. And I think the comparison in Estonia and other countries helps to kind of show that it's not about the amount of money. It's actually having an idea that what do you want to do with artificial intelligence in the public sector.
And how do you guys deal with the data? Because I know I was actually watching your documentary on Netflix, and they were saying that so people are not that concerned in Estonia about their data. The data privacy for them is solved because there's literally nothing illegally happening in sharing their personal data. So how do you do that?
So basically, since 2008, April, Estonia has been experimenting with blockchain stuff. And since 2012, all governmental information systems, log files have been backed up in blockchain. As we are building on the value that every citizen is the owner of their own information, then every citizen can go to a governmental website and see who has been looking at their data, when and why. So this provides us a complete transparency throughout an ecosystem. If any authority misuses if any person misuses the authority given to them and, for example, looks at data that they should not look at, there is always a trace, and this is considered as a serious offense in Estonia.
That's the punishment.
So, yeah. So basically, blockchain provides us full transparency, and it's not that Estonians are not worried, but it is a vast ecosystems that actually provides the transparency throughout various different governmental processes.
Mm-hmm. And going back to your national AI strategy, so what are the main strategies that your government is thinking of? Any investment, any challenges that you're encountering in the short to long future?
So I think the biggest challenge is still building up the culture and mindset, because if I would shorten the 20 years of experience in building a digital Estonia, then in a short, it's changing the mindset from paper to digital. And that's somehow understandable. But with artificial intelligence, the change in mindset is much more complex. It's about changing the mindset from linear to perhaps non-linear. But as all of our educational systems have been teaching us to think about cause and effect, and if and then changing this mindset within the existing scope of bureaucracy is the major and biggest change in the next decade. In order to do that, we actually are changing also the laws. And I would not mind that the legal situation has been a kind of a problem in Estonia. We have been able to deploy lots and lots of different narrow AI applications, but we're also working on basically a general algorithmic liability law, which basically means that it's not necessarily about a particular example such as medical devices or self-driving cars, but we are solving the question of who is responsible and how to manage that in a transparent way, in a more general level. And this situation we will have a law ready by next year, and hopefully this currently is one of the most advanced and aggressive artificial intelligence laws that I have seen within the ecosystem.
Yeah, right. I was actually reading about legalizing AI and the different topics that you have ongoing, and that's what you're mentioning, right? So you're in the process of having some sort of basic legalization, legalization of AI to be able to use, the more applications of AI in your operations. Is that correct?
Yes, but again, I think it's a philosophical matter. We are actually working on the governments and other entities are usually thinking about sector-based legal setting, which means that they mostly are working on stuff like laws for self-driving cars and so on. But Estonia took a different approach, which means that we want to kind of solve the algorithmic liability question in a general way, and then go down into the sectoral-based nitty-grittiness of, I don't know, medical devices and self-driving cars. But what is very interesting also, I have another kind of a job or an angle to as well. I'm currently responsible for interoperability architecture for the WHO. And this organization in the midst of pandemic has somehow entered the spotlight, and everybody is looking at it. So currently we are also working on actually building a distributed data exchange, also to manage the secure data flows during the pandemic and in terms of the vaccination and stuff like that. But this will be the basis of cross-border artificial intelligence working also in the healthcare space. But again, these are the pilots that we are actually deploying within a month and two, and hopefully there will be lots of potential for global cooperation on AI in healthcare as well, and provide some sort of a global governance mechanism so that health data would be interoperable across the borders. So there is lots and lots of different topics around AI, but I think the main thing still is AI cannot work if you don't have the data. So everybody should actually work on the plumbing rather than the gadgetry.
Right. The AI cannot live without data, but probably we should work on the data and have a non-biased data. So maybe having the last couple of questions. So how can we reach to that? How can we reach to a non-biased data set that can run on applications, AI applications? What can we do about it?
One of the most difficult things that I've been pushing here in Estonia as well is that the traditional institutions that deal with bias in the society, they don't necessarily have the competence to deal with artificial intelligence and those kinds of technical questions. And one of the problems also is that the bias issue, I don't know, the most simple example that all of you probably know, I don't know, Google doesn't show you, females higher wages
Salary,
and salary stuff. So these are the issues that cannot be solved on the national level. And one of the problems is we lack the technical competence in the national level, but we also lack the technical competence because most of these problems, they are not national, they're global. So we should invest quite a lot more on those traditional institutions that have not been used to using technology, so that they would be able to also enter the domain of artificial intelligence. And this is a long work, because already changing the mindsets of bureaucrats who are not used to dealing with technology, this is super difficult.
Well, obviously, you guys in Estonia have been doing a great job and succeeding in that. So, I think that maybe changes can start from even local countries and communities like yours and replicate it. And as you mentioned, education is a big part in everything. And having an educational system can help, to raise awareness and solve our issues. One maybe last question before going to take a few questions from the audience is, we're at Women AI's conference. We're talking a lot about diversity. What are the different, initiatives that the government or in Estonia you've noticed, you've seen to help supporting more participation for women in the fields of AI and tech? Do you know anything to recall for us and explain our audience?
We currently have relatively fast programs both governmental and private sector initiatives to get girls more working in technology and to break the typical stereotypes in tech, basically. But both the private sector and governments actually invest in getting girls into tech and breaking the average stereotypes. And there actually are quite a lot of very good examples of female entrepreneurs and female engineers, and especially the AI domain is helping to push it quite a lot. So there is a lot of work to be done, but again, we're moving towards that way.
Okay, so thank you so much, Marten. Let's see if the audience has any questions. People, if you have questions, please write it in the stage chat. So Margaret is saying that, Marten, your presentation was awesome. I want to know, can your architecture system be adapted to suit developing economies at Nigeria?
Yes, we are currently working with ITU to actually build this kind of architecture for low-income settings, and mainly we are making GovTech for Africa. And this is a project that is starting. Please connect me on LinkedIn if you want to know anything more. We will be starting to deploy this type of architecture in Africa, I think in a half a year or a year or something like that. But yes, we are moving towards that way.
Thank you so much, Marten. We're out of time.
One thing.
Sure.
Most of this, what I'm talking, this is open source, so I'm not selling anything. It's about actually sharing the knowledge and know-how. It's about community building. So it doesn't work if you don't have the community.
This is amazing, Marten. It speaks to our heart as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for being patient with these technical issues. I hope the audience enjoyed and could benefit from it. And wish you all the best and talk to you very soon. Have a wonderful
Ciao, ciao.
day. Bye.